All right, new material. I was thinking today, maybe part of the picking issue is maybe not the picking, but what we're doing with the fretting hand. So I'm going to try something a little different with the fretting hand. So basically a different pattern. So let's see how that goes this week. 60 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. Twenty, 1, 2, 3, 4. $180. What? 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And 200. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 240, 220, 220, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And alright, let's go back to 180 for the repeats. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, number 2. Definitely rhythmic with legato. Let's actually make it viewable. There we go. Okay, so using the rhythm notation that is more difficult to see where all the downbeats and upbeats are. This is to make sure it's easier to read the slur marks, the hammer-ons and pull-offs. So right here is an example of what it would look like if we were doing the tied stuff like we've done with the chords and the single note picking. So you got that note right there in parentheses, and you have the tie mark right here, which looks an awful lot like that slur mark. So it can just get messy when you don't, or it can get messy with legato stuff if you use a lot of ties. We have to use a tie mark here because it's going across the bar. But that's why we're not using it here. This way it's not a big old mess. So just remember, you got your quarter notes and you got eighth notes. Up here, your eighth note grid, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things. Each one represents the length of an eighth note. So we really just got to think about, well, how many pieces of this is that note going across? Quarter note is 2 eighth notes long, so that goes across the 1 and. That's an eighth note, so that's just on the 2. That's your quarter note, so that comes in on the upbeat of 2 and goes across and 3. That's an eighth note, which comes in on the upbeat of 3, quarter note on the downbeat of 4, and because it is a quarter note, it covers the 4 and. So I hope that makes sense. See if you can figure out what that count is by looking at all the quarter notes and eighth notes and lining it up with the grid right there. One thing I like to do, and it's very, very helpful when it comes to new rhythms that are very challenging. Basically, let me just do like an example. So I just kind of went through that first one there. What you can do is you write out full eighth note count, because eighth note is the smallest Whoops, I didn't do a full eighth note count. The smallest note or subdivision there. So we want to write out the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So then we look at, so I'm just doing the first bar again. So we got a quarter note, so we're going to underline the 1 because we're playing on that downbeat of 1. And then the next note has to be the downbeat of 2 because we started with a quarter note. It's got to go past or cover the 1 and. So the next thing to underline is the 2 because we're going to play that. And so that's an eighth note, so it only takes up that one space. The next one is a quarter note, and again, we just had an eighth note, so the very next thing has to be on the upbeat of the 2. That upbeat of the 2 is a quarter note, so that's got to cover 2 things here. So that means we have to have that next eighth note on the upbeat of 3, and then the last thing in the bar is a quarter note. So even just by looking at that, you know, because the last note in there is a quarter note, you're playing that on beat number 4. So 1, 2, and 4. That's bar number 1. So that's something you can do. Write out 4 times that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and underline the part of the beat you're going to play. See if you can figure it out that way. And here we go. Time to demonstrate. 60 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 4. 1 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 2, 3, 4, and done. 120, 1, 2, 3, 4. 180, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 240. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Repeats. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, number 3. So same idea. You can underline, write this thing out and then underline what you play, or the beat, part of the beat you're playing on anyway. So these 3 bars establish the full rhythmic pattern we're doing because the rhythm is repeated here, just different notes. Now, with number 1 and number 2, a good thing to do is just get familiar with the notes you're going to be playing. So, like with number 1, without the rhythm, you could have been just going through like this. No, I'm doing that wrong. Number 1, it would have been this. So that's a good idea for number, did I say number 1? Number 2, the previous legato thing, right? So just going through the notes without the rhythm to get familiar with where you're going to be fretting. It's a good idea. So same thing here, just before you add the rhythm, you can get familiar with what the notes are going to be. And this is very similar to one we did the other time. So just doing that to get familiar with where the frets are going to be, very good idea. And then case you haven't noticed, or in case you don't notice, everything is always going eighth note, quarter note, eighth note, quarter note, eighth note, quarter note in length, eighth note, quarter note, eighth note, quarter note, eighth note, quarter note, eighth note, quarter note, eighth note, quarter note. And then it does that all over again here. So you got the bar line that we are tying this note across, so you got to be careful of that. Same thing here. Basically, you only pick when you change strings. That's it. Only pick when you change strings. Let's go down to 60 beats per minute. Of course, we pick the first note, but yeah, after picking the first note, we only pick again after we change strings. 1, 2, 3, 4. How 20, 1, 2, 3, 4. One E, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. $240. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Repetition. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. That was wrong. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I believe that is that. All right, any questions, let me know, and I will see you again next week.